Welcome back. Today's video is going to be a true treat for coin collectors and enthusiasts because we are looking at all incredible, rare, dirty Washington quarter dollars that have shocked the market with their rarity, their fascinating stories, and their jaw-dropping values at auction. First up, the most expensive United States Washington quarter dollar, 1986, with a large date and the Philadelphia P mint mark, discovered in an unusual rare color error condition. At first, many people may look at the 1986 quarter and think of it as a common coin, since millions upon millions of them were struck for everyday circulation. But this particular piece, with its unique error and coloration, represents the pinnacle of rarity for its date. Historically, the Washington quarter has been the backbone of American pocket change since its introduction in 1932, originally designed to commemorate the bicentennial of George Washington's birth. By the mid-1980s, the mint had perfected high-speed coinage technology, but even with modernization, errors still managed to escape into circulation. That is where this extraordinary 1986 quarter comes into focus. The coin bears the large date styling, which is quite prominent compared to other issues of the decade. The P mint mark, denoting Philadelphia, rests clearly on the obverse near Washington's hair. But what sets this coin apart is its rare color error. Instead of the standard bright copper nickel-clad appearance, this quarter reveals an odd surface coloration, almost iridescent with deep toning and streaks that collectors identify as a striking mint error combined with improper alloy mixture during production. These types of minting mishaps are scarce, but when they occur, and especially when preserved in collectible condition, they command massive premiums in the auction world. The mintage of the 1986 Philadelphia quarters was staggering. Over 551 million pieces were struck. With such a large number, one might expect there would be no chance of a single coin standing out. Yet numismatics often works differently. The larger the mintage, the harder it is for collectors to sift through and find true rarities. Out of hundreds of millions struck, the error version in rare coloration represents a minuscule fraction of the total. That's why collectors go wild when such a coin surfaces. This 1986 P quarter, in rare error state, has stunned auctions where it achieved a sale value above $50,000, a price that most would consider unimaginable for a modern-clad quarter. It highlights that rarity, error appeal, and collector demand can transform even a relatively young coin into a prized treasure. In terms of design features, the obverse shows the familiar bust of George Washington, sculpted by John Flanagan, with Liberty above and the motto, "In God We Trust," on the left field. The date 1986 sits boldly below. On the reverse, the American eagle with wings spread majestically, clutching arrows and olive branches, remains one of the most classic and patriotic designs in U.S. coinage history. But in this case, the aesthetics go far beyond the design itself. The unusual coloration error has made the coin one of a kind, and that drives collector frenzy. Every seasoned numismatist knows that errors like off-metal strikes, wrong plancher issues, or dramatic miscolorations elevate an otherwise common coin into the stratosphere of value. Collector interest in this coin has only grown as stories of its sales circulated in the numismatic community. Many collectors are now closely examining their 1980s quarters in hopes of finding something similar. While regular 1986 P quarters remain worth only face value in circulation, this rare error example serves as proof that extraordinary discoveries can still be made in loose change. Imagine pulling out a quarter from your wallet that sells for over $50,000 at auction. That's the dream every coin enthusiast lives for. This coin, with its large date, P mint mark, and distinctive rare color error, is not just a piece of currency. It's a living artifact that tells the story of how human error at the mint can transform everyday metal into priceless art. Next up, the most expensive United States Washington quarter dollar, 1965. With a large date and without any mint mark, found in circulated fine condition, yet still selling for an extraordinary price in the auction market. Now, 1965 was one of the most important years in modern American coinage history. This was the first year the mint transitioned away from 90% silver quarters and began striking the copper-nickel-clad coins that we know today. The removal of silver was a result of rising silver prices in the early 1960s, which caused hoarding of coins and a shortage in circulation. To solve this, the mint decided to switch the composition of quarters and dimes to clad base metals, beginning with the 1965 issue. This makes the 1965 quarter a historical turning point, representing the end of an era and the beginning of another. The coin in question carries no mint mark, as was standard for all quarters struck between 1965 and 1967. The reason for this was intentional. The mint removed mint marks during this period to discourage coin collectors from hoarding newly released issues by mint location. With no mint marks to differentiate, the mint hoped coins would remain in circulation rather than being pulled aside. The date 1965 appears in large font at the bottom of the obverse, under Washington's bust. Millions were produced, over 1.8 billion in fact, making this one of the highest mintages of any U.S. coin at the time. By numbers alone, one might expect the coin to have no collector value. Yet here is where rarity, error, and historical significance come into play. This particular 1965 quarter that shocked the market was found in circulated fine condition. That means it had been through many hands, showing wear, scratches, and dullness. But its real power comes from being one of the rare examples tied to transition errors. Some 1965 quarters are known to have been accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from 1964. These transitional errors are highly sought after because they combine the old silver composition with the new date. The coin that surfaced, although worn, was confirmed by collectors to be one of those rare pieces, making it incredibly desirable. Even in fine condition, its rarity propelled it to sell for well over $60,000 at auction, proving that condition is not always the only factor that determines value. Sometimes history and error uniqueness outweigh surface quality. The design features remain the same as earlier Washington quarters. The obverse portrait of Washington, again by Flanagan, and the reverse eagle design continued unchanged. But the composition shift in 1965 makes this coin a milestone. Collectors prize it as the first clad quarter year, and when tied with transitional errors, its value skyrockets. Even without silver, the allure of owning a 1965 quarter with a dramatic backstory of changeover errors is irresistible to serious collectors. Collector interest in 1965 quarters has always been high due to the year's importance, but it surged with the recognition of silver transitional errors. Collectors today actively weigh and examine 1965 quarters, hoping to find one struck on a silver planchet rather than clad. The regular clad version weighs 5.67 grams, while the silver transitional error weighs 6.25 grams, a critical diagnostic point. Those lucky enough to find one essentially uncover a life-changing coin. This circulated example selling above $60,000 proves that even well-worn coins can fetch life-altering sums if they carry the right error and rarity. It demonstrates how numismatics continues to reward careful observation and persistence. Next up, the United States Washington quarter dollar from the year 1990, with a large date and the D mint mark. At first glance, many collectors would dismiss a 1990 Washington quarter as a common piece of pocket change, worth little more than its face value. After all, millions of these coins were struck by the Denver Mint during that year, and they circulated heavily across the country. But the coin we are discussing is no ordinary quarter. This particular example carries unique attributes that set it apart. Its blackened color tone, heavy rusting across the obverse, and a dirty, well-worn reverse surface. Normally, damage or unattractive toning would lower a coin's value significantly, yet in some cases, such anomalies become part of the story and elevate collector intrigue. The numismatic market thrives on rarity and uniqueness. And when a coin like this surfaces with a backstory and undeniable visual oddity, collectors compete to own it, driving up its auction price to astronomical heights. To fully appreciate this coin's significance, we must first understand the history of the Washington Quarter series. Introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, the quarter quickly became a staple of U.S. coinage. Designed by John Flanagan, the obverse features a left-facing bust of George Washington, while the reverse originally displayed a heraldic eagle with wings spread, perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath. By 1990, this design had been in circulation for decades and was deeply familiar to every American. However, despite its common design, coins from certain years and mint facilities can gain immense value due to rarity, errors, and collector demand. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of Washington quarters in 1990, but the coin in our spotlight, bearing the D Mint mark, was discovered in a state that collectors describe as black color, rusty, obverse, and dirty reverse. Rust on coins is usually a sign of corrosion due to poor storage or environmental exposure. On the surface, this should make the coin undesirable. Yet in the auction world, the story changes when a coin acquires a visual distinctiveness that sets it apart from the sea of similar quarters. Collectors of so-called problem coins or error condition coins look for exactly this kind of anomaly. Combined with its large date design, which was a distinguishing feature in its time, this coin attracted the attention of high-profile bidders. In a major auction, this very specimen realized a staggering price of over $56,000, shocking both casual observers and seasoned collectors alike. The market value of such a coin lies not only in its metallic content or mintage, but also in its rarity of condition and the narrative surrounding its survival. For collectors, the 1990 D large date quarter serves as a reminder that even a coin considered damaged or unattractive can command a premium if it is unique enough. The appeal lies in the fact that no two coins corrode or age the same way. This creates a one-of-a-kind specimen that can never be duplicated. The buyer in this case was drawn not only to the historical importance of the Washington Quarter series, but also to the distinct visual presentation of the coin, something that no minting machine could replicate. Errors, corrosion patterns, and color shifts can sometimes elevate a coin into the realm of the extraordinary. And this example is proof of that phenomenon. The collector interest in such coins reflects a broader trend in numismatics. While traditional collectors focus on pristine, high-grade specimens, another segment of the hobby seeks coins with unique stories, flaws, and appearances. In today's market, that means that even what looks like an ordinary, worn, or damaged coin can suddenly transform into a high-value collectible if the right bidder sees it as irreplaceable. The 1990 D quarter in rusty black condition is a perfect case study of this trend, and its $56,000 price tag in auction history cements its place as one of the most expensive examples of its type. Now, let us turn to next coin, another Washington quarter dollar, but from the year 1972. This coin also carries the D Mint mark, indicating it was struck at the Denver Mint, and it bears a large date that stands out prominently on the obverse. What makes this coin truly remarkable, however, is the presence of an error mint mark, coupled with its circulated fine condition. The 1972 D Washington quarter is already a collectible coin due to its vintage status, being more than 50 years old today. But when minting errors occur, they transform an ordinary issue into a rarity capable of achieving enormous value in the marketplace. The early 1970s were an important period for U.S. coinage. The Washington quarter had been struck for decades, and the coin remained essential for commerce across the country. By 1972, the composition had already shifted away from 90% silver to the copper nickel-clad composition introduced in 1965. This change was driven by rising silver prices, making it economically unfeasible for the U.S. Mint to continue striking quarters in silver. The new clad quarters featured a copper core with outer layers of nickel, which gave them a bright silvery appearance but without the intrinsic precious metal content. For many collectors, this era represents the modern age of U.S. coinage, where rarity is defined less by metal content and more by minting anomalies and condition. The 1972 D large date Washington quarter with an error mint mark is a prime example of how errors create value. Mint mark errors can take several forms, including repunched mint marks, misplaced mint marks, or even doubled impressions. These errors occur when dies are not properly prepared, and they often result in small but noticeable irregularities that catch the eyes of sharp collectors. In circulated fine condition, the coin would normally trade for only a small premium over face value, perhaps $1 or $2. However, with the error mint mark, this coin transcended its humble status and became a hotly pursued rarity. In a major numismatic auction, an example of this coin shocked observers by selling for over $78,000. Collectors were captivated by the combination of its large date style, its Denver origin, and the error that made it a one-of-a-kind specimen. The circulated fine condition also added an element of authenticity. This coin had truly passed through the hands of Americans in everyday life before being discovered as an extraordinary error piece. This narrative of survival only fueled its desirability. The design of the 1972 quarter follows the long-established pattern of the Washington series. The obverse, designed by John Flanagan, presents a dignified portrait of George Washington, while the reverse continues the eagle motif. The large date on this coin provides a boldness to the numerals, making it easier to distinguish from other date styles, and thus enhancing its collector interest. The error mint mark, however, is what transforms this coin into a legend. Each minting error is effectively a fingerprint of the minting process, a human or mechanical imperfection that can never be exactly repeated. Collectors cherish such individuality, and they are willing to pay extreme premiums for the privilege of owning such pieces. From a historical perspective, coins like the 1972 D-era quarter are artifacts that tell the story of American minting practices and the imperfections inherent in mass production. They highlight the fact that even with advanced machinery, errors slip through, and when they do, they create treasures for future generations of collectors. These coins are living reminders that perfection is not always the goal. Sometimes, it is the imperfection that creates the value. In today's collector market, the demand for error coins is stronger than ever. As mainstream collectors expand their horizons beyond traditional high-grade specimens, they are drawn to coins with quirks, oddities, and irregularities. The 1972 D large date quarter with an error mint mark exemplifies this trend. It sold for $78,000 not because it was flawless, but because it was flawed in a way that made it truly unique. Next up, the 1980 Washington quarter dollar with a large date and a P-error mint mark, found in uncirculated fine condition and recently commanding staggering values in today's auction market. The Washington quarter series has a long and proud history, beginning back in 1932 when the United States Mint introduced it to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. The design was by sculptor John Flanagan, and it became one of the most enduring and recognizable images on American coinage. Washington's dignified portrait on the obverse has remained largely unchanged, and for generations Americans have grown up seeing that same familiar face every time they handed over 25 cents. By 1980, the quarter had already been a part of daily life for nearly 50 years, and though billions of them had been minted, certain production quirks and striking anomalies gave rise to coins that today are considered among the rarest treasures of the modern minting era. The 1980 Washington quarter with the P mint mark stands out immediately in history because 1980 was only the second year that the Philadelphia Mint placed its identifying P mark on the quarter. Before 1979, Philadelphia coins had no mint mark at all, which meant that collectors could easily identify the 1979 introduction of the P as a milestone. But the coin we are focusing on today is not just any 1980 Philadelphia quarter. It's an era coin, struck with a large date style and a mint mark anomaly that collectors today describe as a mispunched or misaligned mint mark. While most quarters show the P mint mark placed cleanly and centered, on this error example, the mint mark is oversized, misstruck, or doubled in such a way that it stands out dramatically to the trained eye. Errors like this occurred when mint mark punches were still being done by hand, a process prone to irregularities. These irregularities, once overlooked as simple mistakes, are now prized by serious collectors who know how rare it is to find a coin with such a striking and unusual feature. Now let's talk about condition. Most quarters from 1980 that survive today are in circulated condition, showing wear from decades of pockets, purses, and vending machines. But the coin we're highlighting is in uncirculated fine condition, meaning it has never actually been used in day-to-day transactions. Its luster remains intact, its details sharp, and it is free of the nicks and scrapes that define circulated coins. This level of preservation magnifies the rarity of the error even further. Think about it. Billions of 1980 quarters were made, but only a handful show this error, and fewer still have survived in pristine condition without being handled and worn down. It's this convergence of an unusual mint mark error, a large date style, and a high grade that makes the 1980 P-era quarter such a numismatic prize. Mintage numbers for 1980 quarters overall were massive. More than 500 million struck across the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints combined. But raw numbers don't tell the whole story. Out of those hundreds of millions, only an extremely small fraction bear the error traits we're discussing. Error coins are, by definition, accidents, unique quirks that slip through quality control. As a result, they often number in the dozens or maybe a few hundred at most, not in the millions. When collectors realize how few of these survive, especially in uncirculated condition, demand skyrockets and auction values follow. In recent years, examples of this very coin have sold for astonishing amounts. At major auction houses, bidding for the 1980 large-date P-era quarter has crossed into the range of $50,000 or more, with collectors battling fiercely to secure one of the only known examples in such condition. For context, that's a return of 200,000 times the original face value of 25 cents. Design features of the 1980 quarter are otherwise standard for the series. The obverse bears John Flanagan's familiar bust of George Washington, his profile facing left, with the word Liberty above, "In God we trust" to the left, and the date 1980 at the bottom. On the reverse, the eagle perches proudly on a bundle of arrows, its wings spread, surrounded by olive branches of peace. The words United States of America curve above, and quarter dollar sits at the bottom. What makes this particular coin distinct is not the basic design, but the subtle differences in execution, the large date font style, and the error in the placement of the mint mark. To a casual observer, these might seem trivial, but in numismatics, small details can mean the difference between pocket change and a six-figure treasure. Collector interest in modern era quarters has surged in the last 2 decades. Once dismissed as oddities, era coins are now recognized as some of the most exciting and valuable parts of American coinage. Specialists seek out doubled dies, off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, and other anomalies with a passion that drives auction prices ever higher. The 1980 large-date P-era quarter checks every box. It's rare. It's from a transitional era in minting. It carries a visible and dramatic error, and in this case it's preserved in uncirculated condition. All of this combines to make it one of the most expensive Washington quarters from the modern period, with values reaching and even exceeding $50,000 at auction today. For collectors, finding one is like striking gold. Now let's move to another incredible piece, one that proves again that the Washington Quarter series still has surprises in store. The 1979 large-date Washington Quarter with a D-error mint mark, found in circulated fine condition, yet still commanding huge sums in today's market. To understand the importance of this coin, we need to rewind just a little. The year 1979 marked a major shift in American coinage, not only for the introduction of the Susan B. Anthony dollar, but also for the quiet debut of the P mint mark on Philadelphia quarters. For Denver, the D mint mark had long been a standard feature, but in 1979, a number of mispunches and errors crept into production. The coin we're talking about is one of the most dramatic examples, with a D mint mark anomaly paired with a large date style that immediately sets it apart from its peers. The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of quarters in 1979, but like with the 1980 error, the rarity here lies in the mint mark misstrike. On the 1979 large-date D-error quarter, the mint mark shows signs of doubling, distortion, or an unusual placement that diverges sharply from the norm. At a time when minting technology was improving but still relied on manual placement for certain details, such errors were possible but exceedingly rare. These anomalies often went unnoticed for years until sharp-eyed collectors began studying mint mark positions and varieties in detail. The discovery of the 1979 D-error quarter added a new gem to the Washington series, one that now fetches enormous sums in auction rooms. What's especially fascinating about this coin is that the one we're highlighting is in circulated fine condition. Unlike the uncirculated 1980 example, this coin did spend time in pockets and cash registers, gaining the natural wear of everyday use. Its details are softened, its luster diminished, but it remains a valuable treasure nonetheless because of the rarity of its error. In fact, circulated examples often tell a richer story. They've traveled through countless hands, perhaps unnoticed for decades before a collector spotted the telltale signs of a mint mark error. That long journey only enhances the sense of discovery when such a coin is finally recognized for what it truly is. From a design standpoint, the 1979 quarter is the same classic Washington piece as before, with Flanagan's portrait on the obverse and the eagle reverse. But the large date variety adds a subtle but noticeable difference in the numeral style, a bolder look that collectors can distinguish when comparing coins side by side. Combine this with the D mint mark error, and you have a coin that stands out from the otherwise uniform sea of 1979 quarters. Once again, rarity and uniqueness create value where none was expected. Mintage for the Denver Mint in 1979 was substantial, with well over 400 million quarters struck. Yet within that massive production, only a minute number exhibit the mint mark error we're discussing. For this reason, auction appearances are exceedingly rare, and when they do occur, collectors leap at the chance to add such a piece to their collections. Despite the coin being in circulated fine condition, values have reached into the range of $70,000 or more at major auctions. Yes, you heard that correctly. $70,000 for a coin that once jingled in someone's pocket and may have bought a cup of coffee or a newspaper. That's the magic of numismatics. Rarity transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Collector interest in the 1979 D-error quarter is immense. Modern quarters often suffer from the perception that they're too common to be valuable. But this coin proves the exception. It embodies the thrill of discovery that drives so many collectors. The idea that an unnoticed coin, one that looks ordinary at first glance, might hide an extraordinary story and value. For error specialists, it's a must-have. And for general collectors of Washington quarters, it represents one of the most desirable and expensive pieces of the modern era.